A couple months ago, I was at a summit, and I was at dinner next to this Fortune 500 C-suite exec, and he said something to me like, climate change is really expensive to solve. I thought that was one of the funniest things anyone has ever said to me. I looked at him and I said, well, I don't think that you understand basic economics whatsoever. Let me give you the most simple example of this. From the year May 2024 through May 2025, the United States spent $1 trillion reacting to climate disasters. In 2014, that number was 250 billion. So in just 10 years, that amount quadrupled. If you look at high-risk places like California with wildfires or Florida with hurricanes, there are insurance companies that are at risk of going under and are actually starting to pull out of certain areas because they no longer can guarantee that those houses, those businesses will still be there next year because of the ever-increasing risk for flood and fire. The very concept of insurance might not exist in a couple of decades because we are losing our ability to predict the future based on the past, which is something that we've been able to do for the past several hundred years. The concept of insurance might not exist in a couple of decades because climate change is so expensive. TSMC is building a $40 billion chip plant in Phoenix, Arizona. This is the largest foreign investment in United States history, TSMC being a Taiwanese company. But Arizona is running out of groundwater, which is a non-renewable source of water. Once it is depleted, it cannot come back. We rely on these chips for our cars, our phones, our medical devices, AI, and this plant is presumably supposed to operate for decades. But when you're looking at a multi-decade timeline, you are looking at a climate change timeline. It is very possible that this plant will only operate for 5 to 10 years before there's simply no more water that they can bring into the area. We're making tremendous infrastructure level investments into factories like this. Using outdated information, that is GDP level expensive. That is the entire digital economy that we're all ever so increasingly dependent on being held hostage by a dried up aquifer. I'm not saying that technological advancement is a bad thing, but I do worry that we are overbuilding the digital world that doesn't exist if the power goes out, while the infrastructure that everything is dependent on, bridges and food, are being underinvested in, and at a time where they've never been more vulnerable. There is some data already to suggest that money that was going to be invested into real things is being diverted into tech venture funds because you get higher returns. So having explained all of that, I want to come back around to this idea that climate action is somehow expensive. I think there's a very obvious argument here that the reverse is true. Climate inaction is too expensive. We're going to see a lot of power outs in the near future because energy demand in the United States has not gone up in decades, and all of a sudden it is because electrification of stuff like cars, because of AI data centers, because of increased AC demand, because it's getting hotter, and our grid is very outdated. We need to be making investments in the systems that actually hold the world together, that actually hold the economy together, like local water supply, like renewable energy, like localized supply chains so that the stuff you need isn't stuck on a cargo ship halfway across the world because supply chains are being disrupted by climate change. Sure, you can call it environmentalism, but really we're talking about economic stability. We're talking about inflation control. We're talking about making sure that the grocery store shelves stay stocked with food, that there's still water coming out of the tap, and that the lights turn on. Right now, we're just not doing what we need to be to ensure that those things continue to be realities. If you really understand economics, you already know we don't need to be asking whether we can afford to invest in climate solutions. Every single dollar that we spend investing into climate solutions is quite literally a down payment on the future. It is saving our economic returns later on. So this is what I'm telling the private sector. The longer we wait to change business models, the more expensive it's going to be. And the higher the likelihood is that your business simply won't be there. I have been saying this for so long. I'm sad that we've waited until it was actually true, but the future is arriving, and you can see it written all over every financial projection. It is not just a better idea to invest in climate solutions, it's a better business strategy. It's an existential risk at this point for private industry that they're not investing in climate solutions and in resilient supply chains and in water systems and all that other really important stuff. And I guess I always want to turn this question back on its head when they're asking me, is climate change too expensive to solve? The real question that they need to be asking is, how much more collapse are they willing to pay for before they try something different?